This is National Native News. I'm Antonia Gonzalez. Hours after police moved in to dismantle a rail blockade in Ontario, there was national reaction. Dan Karpinchuk reports.
On Monday morning, police moved in on the Tyendinaga Mohawk's rail blockade near Belleville, Ontario. Several people were arrested. The barricade had been set up more than 2 weeks ago in support of the Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs in British Columbia, who were opposing a natural gas pipeline project in northern BC. This blockade and others across the country had begun to squeeze the Canadian economy. CN shut down its eastern freight network, and Via Rail suspended all passenger service across Canada. There were layoffs in the rail industry, and businesses were beginning to feel some shortages. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau had been calling for patience and dialogue, but a few days ago that changed. And after the police action, he said his government had no choice.
When it became clear that there was no reciprocal openness to dialogue from the Wet'suwet'en hereditary leader chiefs, we made a shift in our posture.
In response to the police action, there were demonstrations in Ottawa and rolling blockades in Quebec from the Mohawks at Kahnawake and Kanesatake. And Sheila North, the former Grand Chief of Manitoba, says this dispute is not over.
This is not done by a long shot, and this can only be resolved if there is actual, commitment by the federal government, I believe, to move on the long-standing issues that face them.
Meanwhile, Trudeau says his government is still on the path to reconciliation and will continue to work towards that. But the barricades had to come down. For National Native News, I'm Dan Karpinchuk.
A South Dakota House committee has voted not to allow tribes to seek reimbursement for expenses associated with pipeline protests. Last year's legislature established the Peace Fund to collect money for state or political subdivisions for budgets stressed if demonstrations take place against the Keystone XL pipeline. Victoria Wicks has this report.
Last year's failed riot-boosting statute had a companion law that survived called the Peace Fund, created to collect revenue from civil penalties, judgments, and fines. The fund exists to pay expenses for state and local governments dealing with protesters against the Keystone XL pipeline. If it is built, it will cross rural areas with few resources and few law enforcement officers to deal with problems. Representative Sean Bordeaux believes that description fits his reservation, the Rosebud, where a checkerboard of trust land lies in the path of the pipeline just east of boundary lines.
We got over 1 million acres in my community, spread out over 5 counties. And I'm kind of taken aback by one comment I heard yesterday about how, some of this activity doesn't happen on the reservation. Well, with where this activity is going to be happening, I can spit from trust land onto this pipeline.
He says if protesters take refuge on tribal land, then tribal police have to respond. Opponent Christy Turman is director of the Division of Emergency Services for the Department of Public Safety.
There are no structures being planned for or built on reservation land. Therefore, it is not a direct impact on reservation land.
Turman says the law is not intended to cover costs of sovereign tribes who have their own governmental structures. For National Native News, I'm Victoria Wicks in Rapid City, South Dakota.
A bill introduced in the Illinois legislature would prohibit schools from using Indian mascots or logos unless the school gets consent from a tribe. Under the bill, the tribe must be within 500 miles of the school and renew consent every 5 years. The bill is currently in a House committee. I'm Antonia Gonzalez.
National Native News is produced by Koahnic Broadcast Corporation with funding by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Support by the Sonosky Chambers Law Firm, championing tribal sovereignty and defending Native American rights since 1976, with offices in Washington, D.C., New Mexico, California, and Alaska. Support by BNSF Railway, moving our economy for over 165 years. Our vision is to operate injury and accident-free with safety programs, training, and technology. More at bnsf.com/tribal relations.
Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.